Welcome to Deep Waters, only on ProBox TV, your boxing channel. I am George DeMattelis, and it's always much more fun when you got the Magic Man, Paulie Malignaggi, the Fighting Collegian, Chris Algieri, and Showtime Shawn Porter here on Deep Waters. Looking forward to hearing what these champions have to say, because Saturday pay-per-view PBC in conjunction with Amazon Prime Video. And Shawn, I wanted to ask you, is this card with the 4 title fights on the pay-per-view card, is this kind of setting a new tone? Is this the tone that PBC in their partnership with Amazon Prime, that the tone they want to set for the start of this collaboration?
Yeah, I was gonna say I felt like we saw that a lot as the year commenced last year on Showtime. We saw a lot of big fights that we have been expecting to see for a long time. We saw a lot of belts in the ring on fight night, and that's what I know about TV. TV thinks that whenever you're trying to introduce this sport to people who may not be avid fans of this sport, it's always nice to have some trinkets in the ring, because where somebody may not know the name, they see the gold and it thinks that this fight is important. So yeah, I think it's very important right now that they have those trinkets in the ring when these fights are just starting, because you got to get people behind you one way or another. You know, if it isn't boxing fans talking to other people trying to get them to watch the boxing, when you've seen these commercials on the Prime network, which you more than likely will see a lot of, is belts in the ring to kind of entice people to think that, hey, I don't know who this is, but this looks like it could be intriguing. So I think this makes sense, and I think this is what we should see, what we should expect to see along the way through the rest of this year.
Yeah, Chris, what do you make of this Amazon Prime and PBC kind of setting the right tone there with this maybe new style of pay-per-view card?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Shawn the Champ said, last year was a really strong year for PBC. They put on a lot of pay-per-view cards that were good top to bottom. A lot of highly competitive fights on the undercards leading up. Not just a top-heavy pay-per-view card, which we've gotten kind of used to in the past, unfortunately. And this is more of like a UFC model where the card is good top to bottom, got competitive fights throughout. And I think with this new platform where we're going to get some eyes that people aren't necessarily used to the old format is a good idea. Yeah, it's not a lot of eye-catching names. It's not a lot of guys that people are going to tune in for. Oh, I want to see this guy fight because I've heard of him, for casuals or younger fans. But if the fights are good, the fights are competitive, I think that's important, because I think people are going to tune in because, hey, listen, this is a new platform. It's on Amazon Prime. It's going to be in front of a lot of eyes. They're going to be seeing the link to click in and purchase this pay-per-view. Let me give this a shot. And then if you tune in and you're seeing really competitive fights, whether you know the names or not, I think that's really good for the sport and kind of lays the ground the year with the rest of the cards that are going to be rolling out, whether they're pay-per-view or they're just subscription-based. So I think this is a pretty good start. I mean, it's not the ideal. I was expecting a really strong card right out of the gate, but we have Canelo Alvarez. This looks like it's going to be a nice entry. I don't know what the pay-per-view buys are going to be like, but at least the fights are going to be good from what I expect. Hopefully the fighters live up to what our expectations are on paper, and we get some excellent fights and some really competitive matchups. If that's the case, it's a good start for the PBC rollout on Amazon Prime.
I think this is a solid pay-per-view card for your boxing fan. I think the boxing fan, the non-casual, will really understand that this is a card of solid fights, fun fights. I'm not sure if there's anybody that really has the crossover appeal to draw in the casuals to, get those amounts of buys to, reach those star numbers where, people get impressed. The gossip columns say, oh, we sold this many pay-per-views. But as far as boxing fans are concerned, I think this is a very, very good card. And I think it's full of solid matchups that boxing fans with a boxing fan's eye will recognize all these names and see that, it's a really good card with great matchups. I think Shawn made a great point where he brought up the belts that are all being on the line. They're all major world titles in all the fights. There's a major world championship in all the fights. Because in a sport that people complain about too many belts, the inner core of boxing fans know the major world titles, the ones that are important. And they realize that, again, a boxing fan's show, a boxing fan's card. This card is chock full of fights that are for major world titles, involving major world titles. So we know that these are the best of each of those weight classes being pitted against one another. I also want to make a point, or piggyback on a point that Tim Bradley made the other day when we had him on. You know, Amazon is just kind of like the soft opening. You know, it's a solid card, but it's not the sparkling name card that's going to get you a ton of buys, right? If this card gets you 300,000 buys, I think it's solid, you know, because it's not because I'm dissatisfied with it. I think it's a very good card. It's just that it doesn't have the name recognition to draw a lot of casuals in. So this is kind of like a soft opening, and every new business has a soft opening, like Tim said the other day. You have a soft opening, then you have your grand opening, you know. And I think Amazon and PBC are doing the soft opening with a solid card here, and the month of April, and then the grand opening will be Canelo Alvarez and Jaime Munguia in May. That's sort of like your grand opening. Okay, we're here, and that will draw in all the casuals and everybody else who has not already been welcomed during the softer opening. A soft opening that, again, I will add, has fights that are fun to watch, and I look forward to seeing.
So, Shawn, is this what the fans want to see? Do they want to see the star power, or do they want to see 4 or 5 really good fights and kind of build the reputation of PBC and Amazon that they can put together a good card?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the fans, I'm way more respectful to the fans than Paulie Malignaggi is. But I feel like I'm Paulie saying I feel like I can't even get it out. Fans don't know what they want. There it is. I said it. Fans don't know what they want, and it's not a knock on the fans, but I really do think, to be serious about it, I think the boxing world has sent so many mixed signals to the fans that a lot of times they don't know what they want. They want the big name. You got Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia in the ring, just to find out that Ryan was not that A-level fighter that a lot of us, like true boxing people, knew he wasn't. And then all of a sudden the fight's a letdown because he didn't get up off of one knee. You don't know what you want. Then you want this big old star appeal, but when you want the star in the ring, it's hard to get star against star. So it's really, you know, there's been mixed signals for so many years. I think the fans should take this one for what it is, because I would guarantee you the co-main event and the main event will not be letdowns. I have no clue how long either are going to last, but I know from the beginning to the end, both the main and the co-main are going to be fun, exciting fights that anybody would enjoy watching. I guarantee you, if somebody's walking past a bar and they see Isaac Cruz going chasing after Rolly Romero, they're gonna stop. They're gonna be intrigued, and they're gonna say, "Oh, this guy means business," you know. And then once you get to the main, I think it's a great main event fight as well, which in some ways stylistically may be even more exciting to just a casual person, again, walking past a bar than the original card more than likely was. So I think all in all, fans don't really know what they want, which is why you just kind of keep giving them whatever you can produce, and you know, hope that they hang on until you can get them the big of the big, you know.
Wednesday night fights. On the next Wednesday night fights, March 27th, join us for the main event. Puerto Rico's Joseph Blessed Hands Adorno takes on Nicholas the Axeman Walters from Jamaica. Live from the ProBox Event Center in Plant City. Get your tickets at proboxtv.com or take your chances at the door. Wednesday night fights.
Welcome back to Deep Waters. All right, Paulie, what were you going to say before we head to break? Go ahead.
I just think that boxing fans, there's different tiers, right? The hardcore boxing fans, they'll watch all the fights. They'll watch our Wednesday night fight series. They'll watch the championship shows. They'll watch whatever boxing's on TV. Then there's like that's that A tier. Then there's that B tier, that C tier, you know, sort of that C tier will probably be a little more casual fans and whatnot, you know. But I think that, you know, the A tier and even a lot of the B tier will buy a card like this, right? But when you get those kind of, you know, Shawn talks about, you know, the fans don't really know what they want. The casuals add numbers because the A and B tier will buy all the shows, right? They'll watch all the fights, and including the star power ones, the not star power ones, they'll buy all the ones. But then when you add, so you get those numbers all the time, But then you add a star power fighter in there, even if he's not that good, like a Ryan Garcia, who's not even that good, but he adds star power to it. And now all of a sudden you're getting that third tier in there. And that third tier now adds, it's just a matter of tracking buys, really, and so then you start to just say, okay, well, this one sells more than that one, and so on and so forth. But it's not always necessarily a reflection of the quality. I feel like this is a quality card, even if it doesn't have that star power kind of guy. Haney versus Ryan Garcia will probably sell more pay-per-views than this card, but do I think it's even comparable to the amount, how badly I'd much rather watch this card coming up this weekend than I'd rather watch Haney and Garcia? But me as a hardcore, I'll watch both of them. Still, man, I mean, I don't even think the two cards are comparable, So it's interesting, and the dynamics, they say numbers never lie. Well, the numbers can lie, actually, man, because I think a lot of fights that suck draw a lot, because of star power that is there, a guy like Conor McGregor wins once every leap year, but he still sells more pay-per-views than everybody else. You know what I mean? So does the star power always reflect the quality? Not necessarily. You know what I mean? Not necessarily. Do the numbers always reflect the quality? Not necessarily. This is a really good card. But again, I'd be shocked if it sells about 300,000 pay-per-views. And that goes to show you that the numbers can, in fact, lie.
Yeah, Chris, what do you make of
every 4 years, right?
Every 4 years. And that's it. After Connor's lucky, he wins once every leap year. He doesn't even win that much, but I was being generous.
Chris, what's your take on the star power versus the deep card and what Shawn and Paulie are mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Shawn, to your point, like fans don't know exactly what they want in terms. Well, they don't know exactly what they want when they're on X and they're tweeting. But listen, you know what they do want? They want good fights and they want entertainment. And that's one thing, for example, that ProBox has done really well. We care about making good fights. The matchmakers do their job and make sure that the match was good. I think the matchmakers did a great job on this card. And listen, there's no guarantee to how good a fight's going to be. You never know what can happen. This is boxing. It's the reason why it's one of the toughest sports to bet on there is. But I think the matchmakers did their due diligence on this fight. And whether you're a partisan fan or not, like you said, Paulie, those A's and B tiers are always going to tune in. They're going to watch every fight. Listen, I'll watch a tough man fight, and it could be good, and I might enjoy it. But a lot of other fans, they're looking for, I want to see Mike Tyson versus Lennox Lewis, even though they're both, old. They're like, listen, that wasn't a good fight either, but everybody wanted it. And to your point, guys, the star power is important, but it doesn't make for the best fights. We rarely see star versus star in fight of the years. Fight of the years happen on those lower tier level fights where guys aren't really exactly sure about the names or who exactly they are. And I think that's important. So like to your point, Shawn, walking by the bar, you catch this fight, like, oh man, these guys are throwing. These guys are getting into each other. This I want to see this. And then they go, oh wow, then that's how new fans are made. That's how fighters become stars. Shawn, you did it. You were one of those guys, the fan-friendly guy. People walk by and go, ooh, I like what this guy's doing. This is fun. This guy brings it every round. I want to see this guy fight again. What's his name? Oh, that's Shawn Porter. I'm going to follow Shawn Porter from now on. So this has an opportunity based on the platform and the matchups to create future stars. And I think that's really where the gold is in this card. Yeah, it doesn't have those big names. It doesn't have those eye-catching things you're going to walk by and be like, oh, Isaac Cruz is fighting, so I'm going to tune in. But you watch that card, you catch a part of that card, and you go, hey, I want to watch Isaac Cruz again. That guy was fun to watch because maybe a lot of American fans haven't seen him. Hey, who knows? Listen, we got Australia on this card, right? Tim Tszyu. That's a huge boxing market now. We got these guys who are going to tune in because of Tim, and now they're going to see Isaac Cruz. They're going to see Rolly Romero. Zarafa's another guy who's an Australian, like you said, Champ. So, they're going to tune in for him as well. So they're going to tune in early. They're not going to just look at the main event. They're going to come in early and watch some of these fights. They might see Elijah Garcia on there and be like, hey, man, I want to see this guy again. I want to see Brian Mendoza already fought, Tim Tszyu. But, so you got Bohocek now, another guy who's another fan-friendly guy. So you got a lot of fights on this card that I think have the ability to create new stars for the future. But not right away, but listen, it's building. This is the first rollout of this opportunity between PBC and Amazon Prime. And like you guys both said, I mean, true fight fans, like we're tuning in. So.
All right, so let me ask you this, Shawn. How does a boxer who's a free agent, how does he kind of maneuver and move through these different promotions and now with the pay-per-views and everything like that? How much power do they have?
And ain't too many free agents in the boxing world. I mean, even when you look at Canelo, Canelo can't even get around as a free agent. He has to sign a multi-year deal or multi-fight deal. Being a free agent in boxing is a it just doesn't happen. The one I'm still not convinced he's a free agent is Devin Haney. I've been told multiple times by his dad Bill that they're free agents and they come and go where they please, and I'm like, nah, yeah, right. Show me the paperwork. Eventually, something's gonna come out. However, to that point, Bill says that they are free agents, and the only way you can move in this sport is by doing exactly what they do. Bill makes a lot of noise, and then Devin goes and backs it up. And ain't a lot of fighters in this boxing game that can make a lot of noise. Then on top of that, go and back it up, and they got the right person who can maneuver and make the business moves that are needed and necessary in order for them to continue to get those big fights. The networks want you. When the networks don't want you, the promoter wants you to put you on their network. So that's something that doesn't happen very often, but something that I definitely would like to see. I think that there's certainly fighters who deserve to be on ESPN top 10 who never make it because they're not an ESPN fighter. And there's a lot of fighters that don't get talked about on the DAZN network, that don't get talked about, more than likely won't get talked about on the Prime network as well. So we definitely, that's something I would love to see more of. When you're trying to figure out that recipe, the question is Bill going to give it to you?
Probably, what do you make of free agents and how they could impact the business and obviously impact the quality of pay-per-view cards? To
They
Shawn's
can't.
point.
They won't. Like Shawn said, there's not really a lot of free agents. It's very, very, very difficult to maneuver as a free agent. You need the connections with the judges and the networks in order to get close decisions, in order to do that. So I'm not even gonna visit into the Bill Haney and Devin Haney thing, because basically my thoughts on that would you know expose possibilities that I don't want to expose. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't want to do that to anybody. You know what I mean? I think they're maneuvering very, very intelligently. To say it, to put it eloquently, but I think that it's very, very difficult to do, and you got to have a lot of money, but you've got to probably, if you're not going to tie yourself in to a strong promoter or a strong network and then still expect to get the decisions, it's very, very difficult to do. I mean, nobody just gonna do you favors like that. There's got to be money changing hands somewhere on there, regardless, and that's kind of the thing. The fighters are typically beholden to the networks or the promoters in exchange for being treated just fairly, really. You know what I mean? Just getting decisions that they may deserve, like so. And we see that all the time, a fighter going on, take on a fighter who has a contract deal with a promoter or with that network, and he may beat that guy, but he doesn't get the decision, It's unfortunately some of the uglier side of boxing. So it's very, very difficult to maneuver as a free agent in the sport for that reason. Guys aren't just going to do you favors just because they like you. There's, some kind of favors have to be change hands. We'll say that.
Yeah, all right.
Let me just amplify what Shawn said.
All right,
there
Chris,
are
hold
no
on.
free agents. I'm not saying much. I'm just saying there are
Okay,
no
quick.
free agents. There are guys who are able to move in and out certain ways. They're not free. Nobody's free in boxing.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Chris, let's start off with this UFC model when it comes to building pay-per-views. Can that be sustained in boxing when you consider all the promoters and then the networks and the boxing organizations as well?
Well, that depends. That depends how much money promoters want to make. So the dirty little secret about the UFC model is those undercards are deep because the fighters don't have a choice. They don't get paid as much money as a lot of boxers do. So the overall overhead for the promoter is much lower, and they're matching guys up. One, it's a smaller talent pool. There's just not as many fighters, and you have one guy who is in total control and is able to make the matchups. If you say no, cool, we pull in another guy. Oh, that's not enough money for you? Okay, cool. There's three other guys waiting, and that'll take the fight. And even though the talent pool is smaller, you got guys who are just hungry to fight because their pay is that much lower. I remember back in the day, I grew up. I was a martial artist coming up, not a mixed martial artist. I was a world champion kickboxer, but I grew up in a lot of those MMA gyms and spent time around those guys, even when I was boxing. And a lot of those guys go, "Man, I'm trying to make that boxer money," and it's funny because it's a very different market. So yeah, you can stack these cards with good competitive fights because you don't have to pay these guys as much. And promoters know that. They understand there's an overhead. They have a certain amount of money and how they're going to make these fights. That's why we saw a lot of top-heavy fights in pay-per-views, because they were matching up superstars at the top in boxing, and you got to pay them both a grip. And then everyone else below that's going to get less. That's why you got these light cards on the bottom. or light, as in lighter fighters because they take less money, or female fighters, and a lot of fighters that get paid less on a lower pay scale. So it's going to be really difficult for boxing to sustain truly competitive undercards with top level names. Because of that reason, because boxers just garner more attention, more money, and it's going to be much harder for promoters to actually make a profit if they're paying everybody on the card what they're worth.
Yeah, Paulie, what do you think about what Chris said there?
Also, also it's the business is much more competitive in boxing. You know, MMA has been typically very top heavy, with the UFC being the main brand. Now you see PFL starting to catch up. You see One in Asia starting to catch up, but really the UFC is still the main brand. While boxing, on the other hand, is pretty competitive. You know, you've got, in the U.S. alone, you've got 3 major promoters. Well, DAZN is based on the Matchroom is based in the UK, but they've got a lot of American fighters. You've got 3 major networks and 3 major promoters that, and the talent pool kind of gets divided among them. So you're not able to always take from one promoter to the other promoter and match up the fighters. While in the UFC, everybody's fighting from within the same stable. So you don't have a lot of choices, because what they offer you is what you're going to take. And if you don't take it, it's not like, okay, you know what, we'll get back to you. It's still, you're still going to fight that day, but we'll get you another opponent and we'll make you another offer, like happens in boxing. No, there's one guy at the top, like Chris Algieri said, and he's a pig at that. So he's not going to come back and say, okay, you don't want that fight, you don't like that money. You know what I'll do? I'm going to call you back tomorrow with a different opponent and a different offer. No, he's going to say, you know what? F yourself. Now you're not fighting. Too bad. And now you sit on the bench, While in boxing, you kind of have that deal where you're like, you know what, I want more money if I'm going to take this fight. Okay, you know what? We don't have that money in the budget. We'll call you next week. We may have this other fighter that may fit that budget, and we can make you another offer or whatnot, and you'll wait for that offer and you'll get it. So the business works in different ways. You don't have. Don't get me wrong. Any business, there's millions of dollars running through it. They're going to be dirty. There's things to maneuver that are dirty, but I mean, MMA has outright pigs doing it. I mean, you had Conor McGregor, who made a lot of money, man, because he was able to kind of be very shrewd in terms of the way he maneuvered in MMA. Also, you got a really dumb fan base there. You don't even have to win in that fan base, and you can be popular. So that always helps. In boxing, you actually have to win to be popular. But nonetheless, he was able to be shrewd and whatnot, and made a lot more money than the other MMA guys. But that doesn't mean he wasn't bending over and getting it with the sandpaper condom from Dana White. He's still getting it, But he still made a lot more money than the MMA guys. But typically, this is why you see boxers who stay in boxing, don't go to MMA. But MMA guys, they'll typically come over to boxing. The model can be more fun in terms of making competitive fights. And that's sort of the thing where boxing has to catch up, right? The UFC model has competitive fights all the time on the whole card. Typically MMA fans can watch the entire card and they know they're getting really good fights on the whole card. Boxing still kind of has to catch up to that but it's also a reason, Chris Algieri said, because they pay more. So if you're going to make those matchups on the entire card, you need a lot more money for your value than you do in MMA, where you get them a Big Mac and a Coke, and the other guy, you get him a Whopper meal, and you put together a good fight in MMA because they're used to fighting for scraps anyway, So it's a different market. It's unfortunate, actually. I think they make good fights in MMA, but I think at the expense of the fighters, I have a different view on that, because we're all fighters here. I'd rather see fighters get taken care of and paid the right way.
Well, in the end, it's all about making that boxing money, right? Boxing money is really where it's at when it comes to the purses and the big bucks, for sure. All right, Shawn, Chris, Paulie, thank you very much for your time. We always appreciate you here on Deep Waters on ProBox TV, your boxing channel.